I've worked a long time in Indonesia, but and I have been back once in a while, but it's already quite a long time ago. But I've seen an incredible progress. And it's interesting. So let me first bring everyone in. Yeah, okay. Come on. Hi, Beverley.
Hello.
Beverley Postma from the CEO of HarvestPlus. Bruce Tolentino from Erie. We have Shinta, Widjaja, Kamdani from the Business Council. And of course, you already have seen Dr. Masakazu Ichimura from UN Escape, and of course, Dr. Siang Tan from the ED from CropLife in Asia. So we will have a distinguished panel which will discuss the resilience of food systems. And I think it's important to realize that I come from the World Food Programme, and the World Food Programme deals with resilience all the time, but for us, resilience is not only looking at agricultural food systems, but the impact it has on human beings, on communities. And I think it's very important to realize that one of the key elements of this is, of course, undernutrition. And stunting is one of the major problems as part of this building resilience, the tackling of the problem of stunting. So a couple of years ago, when this was discussed during the advisory board, this event, Professor Muluk said, you know, we can't just deal with overnutrition when we think about countries like in Asia, Latin America, and Africa. We have to include the problem of stunting, because it's part of our issue. We have overnutrition, but we also have undernutrition. And I think that's why it's really important to realize that is a challenge which is bigger than we see in the US and Europe. But not many people know that stunting is actually one of the key determinants of overnutrition and chronic diseases later in life. So we cannot tackle the problem of overnutrition if we don't tackle the problem of stunting. And this gives an enormous issue for many countries here in Asia. Because how do you deal with actually animal protein at the age until 2 years of age, and later on you want to reduce the intake of animal protein? So this is a challenge for all the different food systems. This morning we had a very interesting presentation, and I would like to highlight 3 components which are important for our session this afternoon. The first is the Minister of Health from Malaysia did an excellent presentation on the importance that nutrients are important for prevention of stunting. Yes, it's healthy food, but it has to contain all the essential nutrients, including micronutrients. But recent research in the field of nutrition also showed that amino acids are absolutely essential too, and particularly the amino acids coming from animal source food. So how do you deal with that? The other very interesting, panel was from Peter Bakker. And Peter said, we should not only look at production from, farm to fork, but we should look at, start with the fork and then go back. So that's also one of the challenges for the panel. And I would say the last component, based on what I just said about proteins, how do we deal with innovative production of proteins? So let me give the floor first to Beverley, because I think being the CEO of HarvestPlus, you deal with a lot of micronutrients in a very interesting way, not like just fortification, but actually in a very sustainable way of fortification. So the floor is for you.
Thank you very much, Martin, and what an amazing day we've had already. I think I said to Martin earlier, I'm both an optimist and I'm impatient, and those 2 things I think are lending ourselves to finding solutions in this audience, because I know there are many optimists in this audience. We've heard some staggering numbers, and when I moved out of the corporate sector and into the international development community a year ago, it almost broke my heart, because the numbers of suffering, it's just truly staggering and utterly unacceptable. I can't bear the fact that 3 million children are going to die because they're undernourished this year, and that 1 million of those are lacking in micronutrients. They're dying from this awful thing called hidden hunger. And that's one of the reasons why I was fortunate to join HarvestPlus, because I believe this problem is fixable. I believe we have all the tools we need to fix this problem, to reach the Zero Hunger Sustainable Development Goal by 2030. And there are three main reasons for my optimism. First of all, I think we're a tremendously innovative species. We have all the knowledge and the tools to innovate our way out of this problem. Secondly, I think there's a very good economic reason to fix this problem right now. And I think the finance minister articulated that incredibly well this morning. And having an economic driver, as we know, the human species tends to react to its back pocket. And I find that's a very compelling reason to be optimistic we can fix our challenges. The third reason I'm optimistic is because I believe this is the era of the rise of the silo breakers. I've spent 20 years sitting at this difficult nexus, these tension points between agriculture and nutrition, between the private sector and the public sector, between big farming and smallholder farmers. And for the first time in that period, I feel confident that there are the right leaders emerging, the right silo breakers emerging, to put us all in the same room together, to do this, and to turn this into action. And I believe that there's enough silo breakers that are both optimistic and impatient. They include leaders in government. We saw the Malaysian health minister demonstrate how she and her colleagues are working across ministries. And not just working across ministries, but working across countries to solve this, to share their learnings. We've seen philanthropists emerge and put very large sums of money on the table to help nudge these big movements go from an idea to a solution and mobilize consumers to make the change. And the big and most exciting one of those is the one that I'm involved in right now, is called Biofortification. This simple idea where we can actually go back and grow the nutrition back into the very crops that 2 billion people are relying on for their diets. And with the right mix of innovation and leadership, we can reach up to 1 billion people with these new crops, with high zinc rice, with high iron lentils, with high zinc wheat, substituting basic staples with more nutritious varieties. And I'm very excited that HarvestPlus has been shortlisted by the MacArthur Foundation, one of these really super innovative philanthropies at the moment, to compete for the chance of winning $100 million. And we find out next month whether HarvestPlus will be the finalist that takes away that big prize. But this gives me optimism. We have an opportunity to mobilize these linkages and to make this mainstream so that the consumer can get excited about nutrition, and to do it through investing in agriculture. Thanks, Martin.
Thanks, Beverley. So I can apply for the job in a couple of months with you. Okay, let me go to Bruce. Bruce, you know, IRRI is an extremely important agency, and you know, since I started to work in Bangladesh, I've seen the work of IRRI, really important. But you know, what do you think is really needed, you know, and what IRRI can contribute to this innovative way of thinking in the food systems?
Yeah, well, thank you for this opportunity. Well, this morning we heard really bad stories about what's going on. And indeed, the challenges before us are very clear. We need to produce a lot more food for a lot more people using a lot less land and water. How do we do that? I've got two things that I keep in mind. First, we need to work together, as what Beverley has said. And indeed, we're all here today. We're working together. We've brought East and West. That's an amazing accomplishment to begin with. We have brought business and government together. And we're actually bringing together many line ministries which often don't work with each other. Agriculture and health, environment, commerce, Ministry of Finance. That's an important way of getting governments to look at the food problem together and work on it together. So let's give everybody a round of applause. Now, working together on what? And IRI, the International Rice Research Institute, is a science outfit. We generate public good science that all governments, all peoples can use for the taking. And that public good science can only be developed if we all invest in science. Because actually, all across South Asia, all across Southeast Asia, we do not invest in science as much as we should. We need scientists. We need young scientists in particular, so that they will produce the knowledge and technology and science that will enable us to produce more food from less land and less water. We need the science to help us produce more nutritious foods. We need the science to help us understand how to eat more wisely. And that investment is so crucial. All across Asia, we're actually less than 1% of GDP investment in R&D, when the global achievement, the global benchmark for investing in R&D is about 3%. So we've got a long way to go to build the science capability to ensure that we can produce more and eat better and live longer. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. I can't agree more with you. Dr. Siang, one of the issues, which we discussed over the past, I would say, decade or so, particularly in the among the Rome-based agencies, are how do we dealing with smallholder farmers? How can we actually improve from a production side, and support these smallholders? Could you go into that topic a bit
Thank
more?
you, Martin. Again, thank you for the organizers for inviting me. It's always good to see old friends and talk about the importance of food security and resiliencies. A lot of people tend to look at resiliencies as a small component. Just imagine, if the farmer cannot have sufficient income to buy food for his family, where is the resiliency of nutrition sufficiency? Therefore, goes back to the question, if we don't provide the farmers with the correct technology for him to do with adaptation, mitigation of climate change, his farm is going to fail. His children is not going to be able to buy food. That's why our company, the group of companies that I represent, invest 6.5 billion US dollars every year in R&D to bring technology to the market. And it takes us 13 years to bring the technology to the market. But the fundamental problem is, how many of you has Samsung 8 or waiting for iPhone 10? In average, apart from the 13 years of R&D, the Asian farmers needs to wait average another 7 years before that technology reaches the hand of the farm. So in total, 20 years. Whereas an Australian farmer or a Canadian farmer needs 18 months after the product goes to market, which is 13 plus 18 months. Why the difference? That is why a functional regulatory system needs to be made available by the core countries. And I really appreciate ASEAN Secretariat for helping us work on a lot of ASEAN regulatory harmonization. But that is only part of it. The government needs to work closely with private sector to ensure the regulatory environment is correct for us to put the technology into the hands of the farmers. That's number one. I think I have 1 more minute or so. Number two, this morning through our WWF colleague said there's 7 billion consumers. There was a survey done in UK a couple of years ago. They asked the children, where does your food come from? And more than half say it comes from Tesco. We all laugh. But in reality, nobody knows how difficult is a farmer has to go through day and day without the state-of-the-art technology, even for breeding seeds. Whether we get a full registration, we need to get whether it's hybrid seeds or normal open variety seeds or biotech seeds in the hands of farmers because the environment is not suitable for quick deployment of technology. So they think it's instant, you go to 7-Eleven and get food, but in reality, all of us sitting around here is trying to make sure we empower the farmers with the correct technology. So it's not only small scale, but throughout. Who is going to feed Jakarta when you see the Excellency's presentation from Ministry of Finance? GDP of agriculture is going down. Number of farmers is going down. The question is who going to feed 300 million people in Jakarta alone, or whether it's Shanghai 23 million? A question for all of us. This is a shared value. This is a shared motivation for us to work together to make sure that we have a functional working environment. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you very much, Dr. Siang. Hi, Shinta. If you could say something about what the importance is for young people to be part of this whole, like new food systems.
Well, thank you, Martin. I think I can't say I'm representing the young people because I'm no longer young, but I have to say that, first of all, I would applaud the organizer to bring such a high-level conference here in Indonesia. I think we, Indonesia, we have been trying to put together all stakeholders to discuss about this issue, and it has been quite tough. So I think I'm so happy that everybody are here to discuss about this big topic. For Indonesia, I think it's very clear. Government has put food security as its priority. However, when we talk about food security, what does it really mean for Indonesia? And I think this is really what we need to define. When we talk about food security, I think one area that we always talk about is regarding sustainable consumption and production. And it's very clear, as SDG number 12 has said, this is an important part. But what is it? What is it? How can we deliver the sustainable consumption and production? First of all, when we talk about farmer, I'm sorry to say, but at this moment we have 17 million farmers in Indonesia based on our latest statistic, 2017. And many of them, when you ask, would you like to become farmer? No. Yeah. Actually, a lot of them, with the industrialization happening in Indonesia, they prefer not to become farmers. But would they have a choice? Perhaps not. So, again, when we talk the basics about producers, okay, we talk about smallholders. How can we encourage farmers, how we can encourage even young people to want to become farmers? Unfortunately, this is not something that they look at a future occupation. So what do we need to do? I think there's a number of issues that lies ahead of us. First of all, I think farmers have issues with land. It's very clear. We have a lot of issues with land. So land, we're talking about access to financing. A lot of farmers, they want to develop, but they don't have enough sufficient financing. Then we talk about technology, definitely, right? Technology is a big part of it. Unfortunately, technology doesn't come to them, so they're really more the traditional way. All these very few points that I made, something needs to be done. So this is why I think we have been encouraging more stakeholder involvement, including the private sector. And to me, private sector play a key role in making this happen. We have a lot of food industry. We have been talking about with a lot of FMG company to discuss about sustainable supply chain. We talk about how to source sustainably. But unfortunately, we don't have the right mechanism in how to make this work. And I think this is why we have been proposing what we call the innovative supply chain, working with producers and consumers. And what is this specifically? I think, first of all, when we talk with the government has its plan. But the plan of the government sometimes are not aligned with what is happening on the implementation execution level. So one area that we need to understand is when we talk about the agriculture sector, we need to put this in the roadmap of the government, which is we have the mid and long-term plan of the government, Bapnas. And we are now putting sustainable agriculture as part of it. When we talk about food security, what is the roadmap? What is exactly that each of the stakeholders needs to do? And I think this is a big part of incentivize as well, that the government are putting the right policies in place in order for this to happen. Second, I think when we talk about the actual execution, we have proposed what we call the innovative supply chain, is to really work with providing farmers with the necessary support of innovative financing. Because we do have low interest financing for smallholders. We have private sector want to work with the smallholder, but we are now formulating the right mechanism in providing this financing to the farmers. Then obviously we have to work with the communities. Then we bring in the technology. I think seed is a big problem at the moment. And I think we've been working with a number of seed companies to also give pilot projects in terms of providing the right seed for more productive, to increase productivities of the farmers. Then when we talk about selling, you know, the farmer needs, they don't have really entrepreneurship skills. So we need to really provide them with the, you know, help them with the packaging, you know, finding the right buyers, you know, all this mechanism needs to be in place. Now, lastly, what's important is also on the consumers. Who are really the consumers? I think Indonesian consumer doesn't really make difference on sustainability or not. So I think pricing has always been a big part of it. So we also have been encouraging more on the green lifestyle, providing more on understanding. When we talk about sustainable consumption, what does it actually mean? So all this needs a lot of campaign and effort. And I think the most important thing at this point is a more collaborative approach between all the stakeholders. So right now, it's more, of course, criticism is very important in pinpointing who's wrong and who's right. But I think it's more important how we can work together to achieve this common goal.
Thank you, Shinta. Let me ask a question to the whole panel, and I give you 1 minute to answer my question. And so Peter Bakker said this morning, you know, there's a lot of distrust between the private sector and I would say social movements. So could you give in 1 minute your opinion about how can we solve that distrust? And I would like to start with you, Professor.
Me?
Yeah, with you, yeah.
Okay.
1 minute, eh?
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity. Listening to the intervention by other fellow panelists, I couldn't agree more that the investment in the nutrition program, especially in the rural community, perfectly make economic sense. And I think this is, of course, this requires intervention by the public sector, private sector. But we certainly need a little bit more guidance from the public sector. Like government said, the development strategy, well, mostly they are looking at export-based manufacturing industry-related development. And now we see a lot of failure in other developed countries in Asia Pacific, like Japan, Korea, and China. And we have to change this kind of development paradigm. And I think with a little bit more balanced national development strategy, I think we can guide private sector to redirect their investment more into the quality of life in the rural sector. And this is something to make it perfectly economic sense.
Thank you. Well, I would like to know solutions for the distrust. We know the solutions, but I would like to see what do you think as an innovative approach? Okay.
Well, I don't think there's anything simple, first of all. This is a very complex problem and it needs multiple solutions. But what I've learned over the years is that there's nothing that builds trust like success. Sometimes it's about starting a relationship by finding that big bet. What's that one project that can show success? Is there one project that the public sector, the private sector, the civil society groups can all join forces on together and reach a goal together? And I believe those big bets are out there. And I think we've got to start focusing. We've got to focus in on the Scaling Up Nutrition platform, the SUN platform, because it's working. We have to focus in on supporting biofortification and fortification projects. They're working. And these are working with all actors together. And I would say, let's not go away from this room without finding that one big bet. It doesn't mean you slow down on your own silo activity. That might be very important. But add to your silo activity one collaborative activity. Because I believe if we can overcome the distrust by showing success, imagine if we were able to reach one of the Sustainable Development Goals early. And we did it not through individually pursuing our own activities, but by collaborating. And one I'll throw out there, what about the World Health Assembly target for reducing iron anemia in adolescent girls? There's one that's not controversial. I think we could all agree. We have the evidence. We know that if we can get iron into the diets of these teenage girls, there's a huge return on investment. We know that we could bring biofortification. We can put iron into the lentils and the wheat that they're eating every day. We can use fortification to fortify products in the middle income and the processed food bracket. We can use so many things that we could all come together. And what if we could show that we could get to that WHA target early? That would stimulate trust and would help us do more together.
Yes, thanks, Beverley. I think you're right, because I work in the HIV/AIDS world. And we have been very successful in public-private partnership because we have successes. We have now more than 15 million people on treatment. And it never could be done if we don't work together. So I agree with you. Success is very important. Bruce?
I like the answer of Sonny Borghese when he said openness and transparency. And one example I can cite is the Sustainable Rice Platform. We all work together in the Sustainable Rice Platform to ensure that business, government, and science institutions can work together to ensure that sustainable solutions for rice farming are implemented and tried out in an open, transparent way. Look it up, Sustainable Rice Platform.
Thanks, Bruce. What about you, Dr. Siang?
I want to take a different viewpoint. Social media. How do we trust social media information that is put to you every 3 seconds? The world has only one chance. If there cannot be a loser. There cannot be a loser because we all need to live. We need food, water, nutrition. If we don't be a responsible citizen in promoting the whole science-based discussion across board, she's going for 100 million to change people's life. We all put money into changing people's life to bring, whether small farmers and etc. If you want to use social media to create fear-mongering, nobody's going to win. Because all of us put science to bring technology to the forefront. And unless we can be responsible, we put everything on a platform, but unless everybody can have this shared value, mutual trust that we are building a new life for one Earth. Thank you.
So if I understand you correctly, so we need social media which we can trust and we're all part of it. It should be inclusive. Yeah?
With the correct messaging,
Absolutely.
not fear-mongering.
Very good point.
Okay.
Dr. Shinta, I give you a different topic.
Oh, I wanted to comment on that one. Okay.
Yeah, but don't do that.
No?
I give you a minute, again, back to the young people, because, we have a lot of young people, but so far, I've seen only people who are not as young on the audience this morning and this afternoon. So what do we need to do? Because that's the next generation. The world needs to be better for the young generation, not so much for me, at least, I'm only 10 years to go, or 5 years, whatever. But for the young people, it's the future. So I would like to have your opinion about it.
first of all, I think when we talk about young generation, then we have to talk about education, right? This is all about, yeah, of course, social media is a big part of it, but education is basic. I mean, how would you want our young people to understand this unless there is the right education? So, I mean, when we talk about, it's nice when we talk about building trust. You know, it's good. I mean, obviously, we want to build trust. You know, sometimes I wear both hats. I have my civil society hat. I have my private sector hat. And yes, we want to build trust. But at the end of the day, what works is when it's what's in it for them, right? Yeah. If there is a model that works for everyone, then everybody will be happy. Sure. And I think this is always the problem. The young people are just following, right, what they see. When they see, of course, we have numbers. Of course, we see how many hungry people. I mean, Indonesia has right now one of, you know, the biggest issue of malnutrition, stunting. I mean, World Bank clearly opened up the report. Young people can see that as well, what's happening among their community, what's happening around them. But the point is, what can they do, right? So we need to find a model that works. And that model needs to be a win-win model, right? If private sectors needs to be driven to be part of this, then private sector need to find a way that works for them. Because if not, what you will do is you just push them and say, you have to do this. To scale up everybody, you are instructed and mandatory, you have to do it. But you know it will not work. So finding that right model that works, that is, I think, the most important. And at the end, the young people will have to see this. They go by example, right? And I work with a lot of young people in terms of, you know, looking into now the different ways of how they can be part of community. It's interesting because a lot of young people now want to be even social entrepreneurs. They said, you know, I'm not here just to make profit. You know, I want my future to have a social impact to my community. I think we have the right characteristics, but to make it work, to make that model work, I think this is what we need the solution.
Thank you very much. So I think our time's is up. So it's very difficult to summarize, and I think also we should not summarize these kind of meetings, because the reality is that the world is complex. But at the same time, what I've heard from the panel is that we need solutions. We need solutions who we can translate by social media, that people are part of it. We need successes, because without successes, nobody will actually do something, because what you said, Shinta, you know, if there's nothing for you in it, you will not follow, you will not change. So I think we have to be pragmatic, but we have to embrace complexity and simplify some of these solutions. But always embrace complexity, because if we don't do that, I think if we really think that the world can be changed in a simple way, I think we lose the battle. But have solutions. But I'd like to thank the panel. It's an amazing, I mean, I thought it was really interesting, at least for me. Okay. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
this afternoon.